The evidence that could destroy Big Oil's legal shield has finally arrived, and it's more damning than anyone expected. For decades, fossil fuel giants have hidden behind the argument that you can't pin specific climate disasters on their operations. But here's where it gets controversial. Groundbreaking new research has shattered that defense by directly connecting individual oil companies' emissions to dozens of lethal heat waves that would never have occurred without their carbon pollution. This isn't just another climate study gathering dust on academic shelves. We're talking about a potential game changer that legal experts are calling a leap forward in the fight to make fossil fuel corporations pay for climate damages. And this is the part most people miss. The implications could reshape how we think about corporate accountability forever. The findings are staggering when you break them down. Scientists discovered that emissions from each of the 14 largest fossil fuel companies single-handedly triggered more than 50 heat waves that would have been virtually impossible in a world without human-caused warming. Think about that for a moment. Just one company's pollution was enough to cause dozens of deadly weather events. Take ExxonMobil, for example. The research reveals that this single corporation's emissions made 51 specific heat waves at least 10,000 times more probable than they would have been in our pre-industrial climate. Saudi Aramco's carbon footprint produced identical results. These aren't abstract statistics. We're discussing real-world catastrophes that claimed lives and devastated communities. But here's what makes this research truly explosive. It establishes direct causation rather than mere correlation. Previous studies could only suggest that climate change generally makes extreme weather more likely. This new analysis, however, draws a straight line from specific company smokestacks to specific deadly events. The human cost is mind-boggling. Global temperature rise is already contributing to at least 500,000 heat-related fatalities annually, with heat waves becoming both more frequent and more brutal worldwide. Remember the catastrophic Pacific Northwest heat wave of 2021? That killer event was amplified by nearly 3 degrees Celsius due to human interference with our climate system. The research team analyzed 180 carbon major companies and found their collective emissions responsible for roughly half of the increased intensity in deadly heat waves. Forest destruction accounts for most of the remainder. Between 2010 and 2019, the 213 heat waves they studied became 200 times more probable on average because of our climate crisis. Professor Sonia Seneviratne from ETH Zurich University, who co-authored the study, explains the legal significance. Having the ability to trace individual emitters' contributions and quantify their impact could prove invaluable for establishing potential liability in court. Dr. Davide Ferranda from France's National Center for Scientific Research, though not involved in the research, emphasizes its breakthrough nature. This investigation provides a crucial missing link by connecting specific climate catastrophes to the corporations whose emissions enabled them. This connection could become foundational for legal action holding polluters responsible. Cassidy DePaula from the Make Polluters Pay campaign puts it even more bluntly. We can now identify particular heat waves and declare Saudi Aramco caused this, ExxonMobil triggered this. When their emissions alone are generating heat waves that wouldn't have existed otherwise, we're discussing actual human deaths, actual agricultural failures, and actual community suffering, all stemming from corporate boardroom decisions. And this is where things get really interesting from a legal standpoint. The world's highest court, the International Court of Justice, ruled this past July that countries failing to prevent climate harm might face compensation requirements. Meanwhile, a German high court established legal precedent in May, suggesting fossil fuel companies could face liability for their contributions to climate change. Here's the proof the courts have been anticipating, De Paula declares. The reckoning is approaching, and it's time these polluters compensated for their destruction. The methodology behind these explosive findings involves something called attribution analysis, a sophisticated scientific approach that compares our current overheated world with pre-industrial conditions. Researchers use weather records and computer modeling to determine exactly how emissions have driven temperature increases. Then, calculate how those higher temperatures affected heat wave probability. The scientists first calculated each carbon major's contribution to global temperature rise, then determined how much those elevated temperatures increased heat wave likelihood. While previous research has connected hundreds of individual weather events to global heating, this study represents the first systematic analysis of multiple events tied to specific corporate actors. Dr. Jan Quilke from ETH Zurich, the study's lead researcher, notes an alarming trend. Climate change has made every one of the 213 heat waves more probable and more severe, with conditions deteriorating over time. The numbers reveal a frightening acceleration. Average heat wave intensity increases jumped from 1.4 degrees Celsius during 2000 to 2009 to 2.2 degrees Celsius during 2020 to 2023. The 213 major heat waves examined occurred between 2000 and 2023 across every continent, though Africa and South America remain significantly underrepresented due to inadequate reporting and weather monitoring systems. Dr. Friederike Otto from Imperial College London warns that the study's conclusions likely underestimate these events' true magnitude, with actual consequences probably far more severe. Even companies at the bottom of the carbon majors list wielded devastating influence. Each of these smaller polluters still caused 16 heat waves to become at least 10,000 times more likely than in pre-industrial times. Dr. Carsten Hostein from Germany's University of Leipzig calls this a breakthrough that could support future climate litigation, while also serving as a reminder that denial and anti-science propaganda won't eliminate climate liability. But here's where the controversy deepens. While consumers burn these companies' products in their homes and vehicles, Quilke argues that fossil fuel corporations bear special responsibility. These companies pursued profits through deliberate misinformation and political lobbying, despite knowing since the 1980s that burning fossil fuels would trigger global heating. Yet no major polluter has faced courtroom accountability, and significant challenges persist. According to professors Michael Garrett and Jessica Wentz from Columbia University's Sabin Center for Climate Change Law, the obstacle lies in various legal questions requiring resolution before scientists can testify, they explain in their Nature commentary. These hurdles include determining appropriate court jurisdiction, whether fossil fuel producers should answer for their customers' emissions, and whether decades-long deception campaigns by some companies are legally relevant. This new research represents another building block, and a valuable one. But the path to actual carbon major liability remains filled with legal and evidentiary obstacles, Gerard and Wentz conclude. Notably, both ExxonMobil and Saudi Aramco declined to comment when contacted about these findings. So here's the million-dollar question that could reshape our entire economic system. If scientists can now prove that specific companies directly caused specific disasters, should those corporations be forced to pay compensation to victims, families, and affected communities? And if so, how do we determine fair damages for decades of climate deception while the planet burned? What do you think? Are we finally witnessing the beginning of the end for fossil fuel companies' legal immunity? Or will corporate lawyers find new ways to dodge responsibility? Should companies that knew the consequences but chose profits over planet safety face criminal charges, not just civil lawsuits? Share your thoughts. This debate could determine whether future climate victims get justice or just more empty promises.